Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Brian Hatt, and it gives me great pleasure to stand here before you today at center court of the ACC, home of our beloved Toronto Raptors and Toronto Maple Leafs, and officially welcome you to the inaugural episode of Chatting Practice. First off, I'd like to thank you for coming along with us on this sports comedy adventure and promise you that you're going to be happy that you did. Our goal here at Chatting Practice is to combine sports talk, and comedy to create a perfect storm, or spormedy, if you will.
Hot dogs! I got your hot dogs here!
Hey, buddy. What are you doing here?
I work here. I sell hot dogs.
Yeah, I gathered that, but why are you doing it now? I'm trying to record an intro. There's no one else here. There's not even a game on.
I'm sorry, you just look like you needed a hot dog.
I looked like I needed a hot dog? What the hell is that supposed to mean? Listen, can you just give me 2 minutes of silence so I can record this thing? Can you do that, please?
Yeah, no problem. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. As I was saying, we here at Chatting Practice are committed to delivering a brand new kind of podcast experience, one that highlights the lighter side of sports.
Hot dogs! Get your hot dogs here!
Oh my God, are you serious?
I could have sworn I heard you say hot dog.
I did not say hot dog. I did not ask for a hot dog. I said nothing even resembling the words hot or dog.
Oh man, I'm sorry, pal. That is so my bad. Let me get out of your hair so you can finish. Again, I am genuinely sorry.
Thank you. I'm sorry for yelling. It's just, this is kind of important, and I feel like, if a couple of those hot dogs happen to accidentally fall off your tray on the way out, that would be okay.
I knew it! One hot dog coming up.
One hot dog? What am I, an infant? Give me 3 hot dogs.
Yes, sir.
Welcome to Chatting Practice, everyone.
Welcome, everybody, to Chatting Practice. I am your host, Brian Hatt. I thank you so much for listening and just choosing us, hitting that little button and saying, yes, I will. Yes, we can, if I may quote Obama. You're not going to be disappointed here. You got me. I'm a great guy. I'm a stand-up comedian. I'm a professional dancer. That's pole, not ballet. I got a great producer here. You're going to hear a lot from him, Mr. Matthew Burke. We call him Matt, or Ghostface Killer sometimes when he's fired up. So that's the team. And then we got lots of friends who are going to be dropping little segments on you too. So again, we're thrilled that you're here. We got a lot to do today, so let's just fire right into it. On today's episode, we'll be debuting Shirts and Skins, our debate club, and we'll be presenting part 1 of our exclusive interview with Mark Hatfield, the ex-NFL and CFL offensive lineman, now a stand-up comedian. But first, a word from our sponsor. Are you looking for a new pair of underwear? Then get into a pair of MyUndies. That's right, MyUndies. The only underwear that's soft, comfortable, and previously worn by me. That's right, every pair of MyUndies has been worn by yours truly for a full 24 hours. And trust me, I put every pair of MyUndies to the test. Here's how it works. Just head to www.myundies.com and select your underwear. Then I, Brian Hatt, will wear those tighty-whities all day long. Making breakfast, running for the bus, at the gym, and if it's Tuesday, maybe some hot yoga. Then, about a week later, that same pair of underwear will arrive on your doorstep. Are they made of bamboo cotton? No. Do they have colorful designs? Not really. Are they clean? Not anymore. I wear underwear almost every single day, so supplies are constantly being updated. You can choose MyUndies from any day of the week. My Monday underwear, or my Saturday/Sunday underwear. Every pair of MyUndies comes with a photograph of me wearing that exact pair of underwear, so you know it's legit. And if you order now, you could get the pair I'm literally wearing at this very moment. You hear that? I'm taking them off right now. And they're going into an envelope with your name on it. I've actually been wearing this pair since yesterday, so it's like a 2-for-1. And if you're not satisfied with your purchase, just send them back and I'll wear them again. That's how satisfied I want you to be. Just head to MyUndies.com now and enter the code USED. That's USED. USED. MyUndies, the most comfortable pair of underwear you'll wear. I know, because I've worn them myself. Welcome back to Chatting Practice. We got a little segment here for you. We call this Shirts and Skins.
Shirts and Skins.
It's our little back and forth, a little debate. We pick a topic, and then we go back and forth with some interesting points that we think you might enjoy. A la a debate or a panel or other words. Get a thesaurus.
Shirts and Skins.
Today's subject happens to be most badass and most lame Winter Olympic sports. I believe, Matt, you are Skins this time. If you want to...
Yeah, I'm Skins this time. Isn't this the first time we're ever doing this?
Yes. This will be the first time I've ever seen you with your shirt off. I'm very excited about it.
Here I go.
If you're ready to disrobe.
I'm taking my shirt off.
Shirts and Skins.
Oh my God, you're like David Suzuki. You're freakishly ripped.
Well, I do the Suzuki workout.
You do?
Yep.
Which is?
It's elaborate.
It's elaborate. It's a lot of fish and dressing like you're homeless.
Shirts and Skins. Most badass Olympic winter sport. Skeleton.
I'd like to start with the skeleton. It must be mentioned in this conversation. I think it's ridiculous that it's even a sport to begin with. When you consider what you're doing, that somebody said I could do the luge, and instead of being a loser, I'm going to go head first instead of foot first on a fucking gurney going 90 miles an hour down a track. Imagine yourself driving an Indy car, but instead of steering with your hands, you're steering with your teeth. That would be a fairly accurate representation, I think, of the skeleton. And bravo to anyone who can do that, because it's just saying to the luge, yeah, you're pretty badass, but I could take it up a notch at the same time. And I got great respect for that. That's number one of the badass sports.
Number 2, men's figure skating.
My second most badass sport, and I mean this sincerely, men's figure skating. Purely for these reasons, I can guarantee you, first of all, number one, 80% of men in this world couldn't even step on the ice in front of all those people in those costumes. They would not be able to swallow their pride enough to get out there and dance your heart out inside of, again, very tightly attached with, all sorts of bedazzling and other sort of things on it. Also, let's, to break it down, figure skating is ice dancing. Ice dancing is predominantly performed by white guys, and we all know that white guys don't dance very easily, so you're actually fighting thousands of years of evolution right there, trying to convince yourself you can dance to music on skates, to boot. And then on top of that, you really have to be a fucking man's man to reach the levels of fucking the Olympics as a man in figure skating. Just like think of all the teasing that your whole life that comes along with this, you know what I mean? Like you're not getting the representation of a quarterback of a football team or, the top scorer on a hockey team or a basketball team. You're just, how many fucking figure skaters have you heard just be like, oh, yeah, life was super easy. Everyone was so respectful of me coming up. I doubt very few of them. It's to want to, you gotta go through so much turbulence. That takes balls. You know what I mean?
I think one smart thing, though, people don't think about that the male figure skater does, well, at least your heterosexual male figure skater is, yeah, you can go be a quarterback and spend all your time with dudes, or you can figure skate, especially couples figure skating, and you're spending all your time with women, which is,
But the preferred company, let's be honest. It's a lot less disgusting when they're around. And of course, the power you need to have as a man to do these things on the ice. But the triple luxes and the agility and the strength and just your feet. I could not do that. And special shout out to Ilderton's own Scott Moyer right now. Yep. Who, side note, freakishly, his parents, identical twins, married identical twins. The whole family looks freakishly similar. It's amazing. Do your research.
We'll mention that
it'll blow you away.
Brian is from Ilderton.
Down the street from me growing up. Great little road hockey player, too, Scott Moyer.
Did you ever play road hockey against him? Or
of course, yeah. He would jump in the old street games growing up as a kid. I distinctly remember a slap shot going straight over my shoulder. And he was young. He was much younger than me, 4 or 5 years. Everybody thinks she's from Ilderton too, but it's not.
They
true.
Train in Ilderton. She's from London, which is where I'm from. So we are basically the virtue and noir of podcasting.
That's right. Yes, yeah.
Shirts and Skins. Most badass Olympic winter sport. Biathlon.
Biathlon. I know what you're thinking. Cross-country skiing with a bit of target practice thrown in. No way. These athletes have guns. In a Winter Olympic battle royale, what other athletes could defeat them? It developed into a sport as an exercise that was alternative training for the military. You ever hear of the Winter War, the invasion of Finland by the Soviets in 1939? Finland repelled Soviet attacks for more than 2 months and inflicted substantial losses on the invaders. How? A major factor was the Finnish guerrilla ski troopers. Not only are you ski sprinting 20 kilometers, you're carrying your .22 caliber rifle and ammo with you. There are no caddies. In the 10-kilometer sprint race, you have to ski a penalty loop of 150 meters for every miss. That's pressure. You're shooting from both prone positions and standing positions. The target is 50 meters away, and at one point in the history of the sport, targets were 250 meters away. Additionally, the U.S. biathlon team is currently speaking out in favor of gun control and against automatic weapons in light of recent events. They're using their brief moment on the world stage to take an important political stance. That's noble. That's badass.
It's funny that you should say that because biathlon is actually one of my lame sports of the Winter Olympics.
You're kidding.
I am absolutely not.
Shirts and Skins. Lamest Winter Olympic sport. Biathlon.
You nailed it on the head. It's cross-country skiing and target practice, which I can barely think of 2 more boring things that you could combine and try and televise. It's like the equivalent would be like a Summer Olympic sport that combines speed walking and letter delivery, something like that. That's about as interesting.
The Mailman Olympics?
Yeah, exactly. The Mailman Olympics. Neither rain nor snow, all that crap. That would be the only way. Like
the bronze medal goes to Cliff Clavin.
That's exactly. Clavin would clean up. These are genius and in great physical shape, despite what you might think. I think, honest to God, though, I won't give up on biathlon. I think the way to do it, the way it's going to survive in the future, is you turn it into a contact sport. You know what I mean? Like, when you're skiing by that guy, you can give him a shot in the ribs with the fucking butt of your gun.
So no actual
just pushing,
shooting
just
each
shoving,
other.
yeah.
Well, if you really want to take it to the extreme level, then we're going Running Man style.
Well, yeah, I didn't really want to insinuate that, but I would pay for that.
They could have rubber bullets and...
That's not bad. Paintball biathlon? That's a lot more difficult.
Then you could have teams that were converging against each other.
Yes, countries against each other.
Shirts and Skins. Most badass Olympic winter sport. Ski jump.
Ski jumping. First of all, let's take a look at the men's world record set by Stefan Kraft in March of last year. Brian, how far do you think it is? Take a guess. Distance.
How far did he jump?
How far do you think he jumped?
Well, what's crazy? What's realistic? 100? Is that incredible?
Nope.
100 meters?
I was that's what I figured you'd guess.
A football?
253.5 meters. That's 2.5 football fields, including end zones. Anyways, I watched that jump on YouTube, and it's nuts. I mean, like most ski jumpers, he's hitting about 100 kilometers an hour at the moment of his jump, and I timed his leap. The hang time is 8.5 seconds. At that
whose
speed,
jump is it?
Stefan Kraft.
Stefan Kraft. Google it.
He's like Evel Knievel, but without the fossil fuels.
Why don't they put buses down there? You know what I mean? That they could jump over, or lions.
Well, they don't go. They wouldn't. Lions would be better because
Hungry
they don't
lions.
go that high into the air.
Yeah, I guess it's more of a
It's
30
a length,
40
not
degree?
a height. There's obviously physical risks involved. The worst thing that I saw in my research was one jumper's legs splay out in opposite directions as he landed, forcing him into a high-speed split situation before the inevitable rolling snowball effect. So it's the threat of such bodily harm combined with the aesthetic aerodynamic majesty of soaring like a human condor that makes ski jumping the second most badass winter sport.
One of those sports where you're like, I don't even know how you get started in that, like you just like do the moguls and you're like, no, I'm not, this isn't doing
not
it for
feeling
me.
it?
I'd rather throw myself off a cliff.
Shirts and skins. Latest Winter Olympic sport. Two-man luge.
It's a two-man luge. I don't think that's really going to come as a surprise to most of you. I mean, like I said earlier, I have mad respect for the skeleton, which is really just another version of luge. But the two-man thing, I can't get down with that. Like, I have enough respect for the one-man luge that throwing on a second guy in some weird planking situation is not really dialing up. It doesn't make this sport any cooler to me. In fact, it really reduces the amount of coolness. Like I said, it goes from one of the coolest sports to the lamest sports I can think of.
Just by addition?
Yeah, it's the subtraction by addition, absolutely. And like, if you added another seat too, I could almost get down with it. So you weren't sitting there like a couple of fucking pancakes.
You can make it longer, right?
Yeah, or longer or something. Like, I don't understand why you have to be stacked, which brings up the awkward conversation that every two-man luge team has to talk about at some point in their careers. Who's the bottom? Who's going to be your power bottom? All puns intended. And who's going to be your top? And do you ever switch?
What are the differences? Do you know? Is one of them steering?
I assume you want your heavier guy on the bottom just for gravity reasons.
Is it like bobsled in that one guy is steering and the other person is just like a pure velocity generating athlete?
Yeah, I guess. It's not going to rack in the ladies, I don't think.
You don't know.
Yeah, that's true, actually. I hear these people screw like monkeys at the Olympics.
Do they have mixed luge?
If mixed luge, again... That's adding something to
I bet there are a lot
bowl.
of people who would love to see Virtue and more
exactly.
mixed luge.
There's a few people I'd like to see go down on there. Trump and Pence.
Shirts and skins.
And now a word from our makeover expert, Chip Vanderswank, and his new segment, Dome Improvement.
Sports. No one's watching them anymore, and I figured out why. They never change. Shouldn't the sport you're watching be just as cutting edge as the TV you're watching it on? My name is Chip Vanderswank, and this is Dome Improvement. On today's episode of Dome Improvement, I'm going to vastly improve the sport of ice hockey. First off, too many pads, too few blades. If Schick has taught us anything, it's the more blades the better. I say, why only put blades on their feet? How about on their gloves, their shoulders, their shins? I want my hockey players to look like freaking Shredder out there. In fact, Shredder's helmet would be great too. Hella intimidating and no mamby-pamby eye protection. Next up, goalies. Got it way too easy. I don't know if they're familiar with this sport, soccer, but those goalies have a whole lot more goal to tend without being wrapped up in sofa cushions. Hockey goalies should feel ridiculous that a puck ever gets past them. No. Here's what you do. No net, no blocking, dodging. That's the ticket. They get a certain area they gotta stay in while the other team tries to nail them. Wait, even better. The goalie is replaced with a figure skater. Make that dodging graceful as hell. I mean, who hasn't looked at a figure skater and thought of pucking them? Am I right? Next on the agenda, the Zamboni. Let's be honest, the Zamboni is why most people go to hockey games. That thing is wicked. My question, why only between periods? Get that thing on the ice during the game. Give it some flamethrowers. Throw some buzzsaws on that thing. Get a Mad Maxian doof warrior shredding a fire-spitting double-necked axe on top. I don't know. I'm getting a Zamboner just thinking about it. Now to pucks. Not enough of them. One black disc on a white rink? Too easy. 7 explosive decoy pucks and 1 real one? That's what I'm talking about. Plus, you could use the decoy pucks against the goalie to keep them on their toes. And finally, fights. Get rid of them. Not very sportsmanlike. You're gonna have a tantrum because you got pushed? Grow up. Control your emotions or you're out. No one wants to see that. Ice hockey. Consider yourself improved.
Okay. Chip Vanderswank, everybody, with some constructive ideas on how to improve the sport of hockey. He'll grow on you like mold or the taste of olives or, colonoscopies. So just hang in there, Chip, and we'll try and set something up with Bettman and get working on those ideas. Because you're on to something. Or should be on something. Vicodin, maybe. I'll talk to your wife. I want you to listen to this interview that we did for you with a good friend of mine by the name of Mark Hatfield, former NFL and CFL offensive lineman, now stand-up comedian, motivational speaker, Ottawa fireman. This guy literally does it all and looks good doing it, too. He's got a great head of hair, a great sense of humor. He's got his own podcast, The Mark Hatfield Trip. I would also recommend you take a look at that. And we're going to get that interview going for you. I just want to remind you at this point that this is the first for us, this podcast, Matt and I. And, well, we never really interviewed anybody before, so we kind of just jumped right into it. You know, I mean, there's very little foreplay to this. I'm going to stop talking now, this recording I'm doing right now, and then I'm going to immediately be asking Mark Hatfield the questions. So there's just chicken and no gravy. Do you know what I mean? But you're going to enjoy the interview nonetheless. I promise you'll love it. He's a great guy. Please enjoy. So, early on in your career, you played football at Bishop's University.
Yeah, the Gators.
Yeah, what is a Gator?
As soon as you figure that out, you get your diploma. You're
okay. Because for those,
your diploma. A Gator is a boot cover.
Oh,
very military sort of beginnings. It's the cover that goes over top of your boot. It makes it look very fancy, hides the laces.
Okay,
probably the precursor to Velcro, I would imagine.
I see. That's an interesting image to put in your opponent's mind.
It is. It's very intimidating for sure. They may cover our laces. Let's watch out, fellas. So, yeah, there's a lot of football being played at Bishop's. I was a sociology major, the study of how people live in groups. So, yeah, very pertinent in today's world. But back then, I had no idea what it was about. But now I have a firm grasp of how people gather and why. And
it's because we're spiraling out
really
of control.
Important things like that.
Yes. That helps you in the football field, I imagine, too.
Totally. Yeah. Huddle, get to the huddle. Let's gather over there.
Yeah. This guy came from the Bronx. I think he's going to go left.
I think he's fast.
In a circle.
That's right. We like to huddle up.
Then in two straight lines.
What made you want to be an offensive lineman?
Well, it's one of those things that kind of like, you know Plinko? And The Price is Right.
One of my favorite games.
You're like, oh, wow, I want to be a quarterback. And you like start off by looking for the quarterback slot, and your little thing goes ping, ping, ping. And it's like going in the wrong direction for quarterback. Oh, but it's going to receiver. Blink, blink, blink. Oh, I'm going to get receiver. No, I'm going to get D-line. Oh, it's in the offensive line slot. Let's go with that. And, yeah, kind of just, if you're a Canadian, 6'6", 280-pound person, then there's a good opportunity for you to play football in the CFL because of the Canadian content rules. A lot of the players that play that position are Canadian. And so it's a good, if career choice is the right word, then career choice making it so you can play football a little bit longer, So that's why. I mean, my coaches always had the plan in the back of their head that I'd be an offensive lineman, although when I went to Bishop's University, I went as a tight end. That's where I first fell in love with football, is playing tight end, catching the ball, that sort of thing. Obviously, getting more attention than an offensive lineman. And our offensive coordinator, if you're a CFL fan, at Bishop's was Jacques Chapdelaine, who last year was the head coach of the Montreal Alouettes. So he's a Canadian football, guy. He's been playing. He played in the CFL and been coaching for years. So as you know, in the CFL, Canadian football, they don't use tight ends. So I went to Bishop's under the assumption I was going to be playing tight end, and on day number 1 of rookie camp, it was like, so fellas, I don't use a tight end in my system, and he looked directly at me, and I'm like, oh, great.
Yeah, you're a blocker now.
Yeah, so I'm a offensive lineman.
What was it you would say in the end about your particular skills that had you land at tackle rather than, say, guard or center?
Okay, so tackle. Well, we can talk about the two different leagues if you like, because they are quite different. In the EFL, it's a passing game, and you have to be more of an athletic offensive lineman. At tackle, you're on the edge, so you have to have really good mobility, good lateral mobility, and just be really good at pass blocking. So, I mean, you don't have to be super big; you have to be super mobile. And or at guard, you have to be more stout. You have to be sort of stand the line more, and it helps if body type is a big thing. And you take a look at guards, and if you look at the composition of their body, their legs are much shorter relative to the rest of their body because they have to get into sort of a deeper stance and sort of just pass block without breaking down the pocket. The tackle makes the width of the pocket, and the guards make the depth of the pocket, right? So they have to sort of keep the line and be stout, whereas a tackle sort of rides the defensive lineman around the outside, if that makes any sense. And that's in CFL. And if you go to the NFL, where there's just a bigger pool of people to choose from, then the tackles are usually guys who are like 6'8" and should probably be playing in the NBA. And so for a guy who shouldn't be playing in the NBA body type, 6'6", 290, to come along, I was more of a sort of a guard in that sort of that world.
Can you dunk? Is that the problem?
I can dunk for sure.
Okay.
Interesting enough that this podcast came along today, and I don't know if I was sort of doing research in preparation for this or something else came across my computer, but I Googled Mark Hatfield's NFL Combine results, and I posted them online today on Instagram, on Facebook. 33-inch vertical.
Get the hell out of here.
Which apparently is the highest vertical any offensive lineman's ever scored at the NFL Combine.
Okay, so not only you dunking, you're touching like high up on the back.
Oh yeah, I could dunk. I played
play?
a lot of basketball growing up. Yeah, that was my sport. Everyone who sort of I've seen since playing professional football were like, wow, we always thought you'd be a professional basketball player, because that was my life. I played all through high school. It was basketball. I'd be out in the driveway when everyone else was going out partying, and I'd be playing basketball. I can remember one time playing basketball in the driveway, and I was like 17, and like a carload full of my acquaintances from school went by. Woo! And I'm like, I'm choosing basketball on purpose, shooting the hoops, and they're having a good time. But it was always basketball, and that's how I got the athletic ability. I believe too. Like the lateral movement is from years of playing, defense, practicing defense in basketball with a low knee bend and moving sideways. And then when I got to learn proper technique in playing football, then that was the exact same sort of movement you had to be good at, and I was already good at it.
It's a lot of footwork, defense. I guess.
Yeah, it's a lot of footwork. It's a lot of being in an athletic position, knees bent, and that's where the athleticism came into play into football.
What other combine stats do you remember?
The other one was broad jump. That year, I can remember, I just before the combine, I was about 290, and I got a really bad flu for a couple of weeks. So I lost 10 pounds, and I didn't even know if I was going to be able to go, and I finally got antibiotics, and I felt terrible on the airplane ride there. And I got there, and it was the first day that I felt good in like 15, 16 days, but I'd lost like 10, 15, and 16 pounds. So when I went to do the jumping drills, I had that much more explosiveness in my legs, or I was able to jump that much higher because I weighed 15 pounds less. Yeah. And so I did a 33-inch vertical, which was the best for offensive linemen that year. And someone posted that they searched it today, and it's the best ever. And my broad jump, I can't remember, but it was the best that year too, which was like it was 9'6" or something like that, which is a long way to jump.
Really
wow. You jumped over 9 broads. That's impressive.
Yeah, that's
were they lying on the ground, or they stack them up? How did that work?
They were on bar stools. It was...
It's like a dunk.
So ideally, then, if you could have done things exactly the way you wanted them, you would have been a tight end in football.
Yeah, no, definitely tight end. Yeah, for sure. That's what I always liked. I don't know if you watched the Giants in the 80s, but I was a big Mark Bavaro fan.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And that was my love for football. I was watching Monday Night Football, seeing the Giants, Mark Bavaro play, and I was always good at basketball. Good at tight end because I played so much basketball, I could catch the ball really well. They always say, like, I don't know if you remember Terry Greer from the Toronto Argonauts was a great receiver. And he always said I played so much basketball as a kid that I was used to catching this giant ball all the time playing basketball. And in basketball, you always catch the ball, right? You don't even think about dropping it. It's not even an option. You don't worry about it. But you get so good at catching this giant leather ball that when they throw the little tiny leather ball at you, it's second nature. It's easy, right? So I played so much basketball that catching a little football was easy.
From what I understand, offensive linemen are the smartest guys on the field. On average, they score the highest on the Wonderlic test. And then there's John Urschel, the ex-Viking who's now pursuing his PhD in math from MIT. Canadian from Winnipeg. What is it about playing offensive line that requires intelligence? Did the offensive linemen seem like the smartest guys on the teams you played for?
Definitely. With the exception of quarterbacks, I would say quarterbacks have to be super smart. Like when I was in Miami, a guy like Bernie Kosar was, I would say, probably genius level, just his thinking ability, the way he could think really quickly, the way he could think through different things really fast. And he would have a sheet of paper. He would go into every meeting, and he would sit there and he would write everything down. He would write 2 sentences on every line. Like he was just so into recording what he was thinking. And it was always the case where in practice, Dan Marino would be standing there taking the snaps and the defense would move around, and he would always look over at Bernie Kosar to make sure he was making the right adjustment. And Bernie Kosar would that's right. He would. And so Bernie Kosar was at even next level to Dan Marino. But offensive linemen for sure have to be smart. I don't know if it comes down to the fact that there's a lot of people with that body type out there in the world, and then they need something else to sort of, separate themselves from everything else. So then it becomes the smarter ones that make it further and are successful. But there's a lot of things going on for sure. You have to think about 5 different positions. Every offensive lineman needs to know all the positions, and it can be different moving from the left side to the right side. And then against like any amount of defenses, a team can invent a defense, put it in front of you, and you have to be able to realize based on the rules for every given play who that you're going to be blocking. And so there's a lot of quick thinking that has to happen there too, and there has to be a lot of you have to think about the game more than just when you're practicing the game. That's when I learned sort of to be a better athlete, to be a better football player. Is it's something you have to go home and you have to visualize. You have to spend a lot of time, thinking through things before you're in the heat of the battle, because when it comes time, there's no time to react, and you just have to. There's no time to think. You just have to react on the field, and that comes from thinking it through and spending a lot of time. Sort of, people say going through your notes, looking over your plays, but to me, the difference becomes when you shut your eyes and you start visualizing those plays. And to be successful at offensive line, you have to be very smart. And I can't even think of someone who I wouldn't have considered smart who played it at the professional level. And I can think of some guys who played who were just probably geniuses. Like I had a friend, Big Whiskey. His name is Jim Reed, and he played for the Houston Oilers. And I mean, he went to law school afterwards. And I remember meeting this guy. And I went over to his. We lived at the Residence Inn. I went over to his room in Residence Inn, and here's an NFL football player. He's played 2 years in the NFL, so he's got a bit of coin. And I walk into his room, and he's got one lazy boy chair that he bought, and sitting beside that lazy boy chair was a stack of about like 30 books. And he would just go in there every night, no TV, had a TV because it was a hotel, but not turned on, and he would sit there and he would read the book till it was time to fall asleep, wake up the next day and go to practice, come back and read. That's just the type of guy he was. He was just a guy who spent his time reading, and that's true for everybody I can think of right now who played professional football.
It's almost like a monk.
I was always the stupidest guy.
You were drafted in the bonus round, 8th overall by the BC Lions. What's a rouge?
A rouge is when you miss a field goal and the ball goes through the end zone, you get a point.
Are you comfortable with that?
You can also punt it through the end zone.
You can punt. Okay. As a professional, as an intelligent person, like you've just said, are you comfortable with a point for trying?
I think it adds some eccentricity. Is that a word?
Yeah, eccentricity. Eccentricity. If you're from England,
it's definitely meant something. You know what I really like is that they've moved the convert way back, because it used to be that to me was the biggest waste in football, is kicking a convert after every play because everybody got everyone forever.
Yeah.
Now it's it's like a field goal, and so a lot of times it doesn't go through. I think in the Super Bowl this year they missed a couple converts.
I think the first 3 almost didn't.
Yeah,
they?
like
They go back
ridiculous
and
amount.
forth.
So that's a great thing to change.
Absolutely,
that they've changed for sure. But the Rouge is it's a nice thing to joke about.
Gimmies aren't fun either.
But also it comes into play sometimes when there's a tie game and they're just trying to punt the ball into the end zone. That could be an exciting thing. They're trying to punt the ball through the end zone. The other team has to catch it and then punt it back. I don't know if you've ever seen that play, but that's kind of an interesting way to end a game.
Because there have been Rouges to end.
Yeah, for sure.
Great
yeah,
cuts,
if you can't
yeah.
run the ball out of the end zone, if you get tackled in the end zone, it's is it still called a Rouge or a safety? Maybe they call that a safety.
So with the Lions, you protected Damon Allen, one of the greatest QBs in CFL history for 3 years.
Yeah.
What made him so special, and was it hard to block for such a great QB running threat?
It's hard to block for everybody. It's it's a tough sport. But no, playing it with Damon Allen was pure joy because he knew the game so well. Talking about a guy who's really smart and knew how to audible and just to get out of certain plays and just to make something out of nothing. I mean, you go out there and you do your job, and as long as you're blocking the right person for a couple seconds, then essentially you've done your job. And then after that, it's just playing ball, right? So he could be running around, then you get to also be creative. And it's just on the field, a great guy to be there because he had a great arm. He could run, a legend of the game. I think for a while he threw for the most yards of any quarterback of all time. But off the field, super funny guy. Like he walked around every day like he's a stand-up comedian. Just an amazing presence to him. Always lit up every room. Always had nice things to say to everybody. He used to do this thing. He would make a circle out of his index finger and his thumb, and he put it over his mouth like he's talking through a little hole. And he would talk like it's a megaphone. He would go, "How's it going, everybody?" Like you'd be in a meeting room. And, going over something all serious or whatever, and then you just see it like at the bottom of the door frame, you see Damon Allen with his little megaphone hand going, "What's going on in this room?" Like super, super funny. And once a week we'd get Kentucky Fried Chicken delivered to the facility in BC, and they'd bring in this giant, like a big bucket, huge, massive bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken for the whole team, and they would put it in the trainer's room, and then they would lock the door, and then the trainer would come in, and as soon as like everybody was ready, they would bring it out because guys would go crazy on this thing. And Damon Allen would stand around by that locked door, and he would do a little chicken dance, and he would go, "Yard bird, yard bird, yard bird," and it just cracked me up so much. But just a great guy to have around. He'd been there and done that, seen everything in the game, and just a fun personality and super nice to everybody, like to the veterans, to the rookies, just a great guy for sure. I really enjoyed being around him. And he was watching one of my podcasts the other day with Henry Burris, and so he's agreed to come on my podcast as well. So that'll be fun to reconnect with him. I saw him a couple of years ago. In fact, I'm looking at a picture of him right now that he autographed for me after he won the Grey Cup in Toronto. And I did Off the Record with him a few years ago, and just a super nice guy. And it's nice to see that he's still living in Toronto too, which is it's great when the players in the CFL who are American, have success and stay in that city.
What do you think of Michael Landsberg's V-necks?
I think Michael Landsberg's a great guy. I don't know what's happened to him though. I mean, he had the greatest, the most successful Canadian talk show of all time. Went on for years. I was on the show about 30 times. And I'm pretty sure he still does curling or something. Does he do curling? Dog shows? Not sure where he's at.
I think it's a combination of the two, actually.
There should be. You curl a terrier. Yeah.
Okay. I think, here we go.
Combination of the two.
Now I'm just imagining tiny poodles sliding on the ice.
Hurry!
Hurry, it's about to shit. That's what the broom's for. Do you remember what you were doing when the Miami Dolphins called?
I got a message on my answering machine. I came back from a workout and old school measuring machine, just a flashlight. I remember walking over, pressing the button, and it said, because I'd been released from the Detroit Lions, and it said, "Mark, we've been watching you since day one in Detroit," which under other circumstances is a pretty creepy message to get. But they continued, and they were like, we really like what we see, and we want you to fly down here, do a workout, maybe be on the team. So Yeah, I was just coming back to my mom's house in Ottawa, where I was living on the couch, and it was a fantastic message to get. In fact, before I left, Bishop's University was playing against the Carleton Ravens, and I went to that game real quick, and some people came over, and they were like, so how's it going? I heard you got cut from Detroit, and I was able at that point to say, well, I'm going to Miami to do a workout for the Dolphins. So that felt good.
Yeah. So suck on that.
Yeah.
Does Dan Marino have soft hands?
Soft, beauty, everything. Skin is immaculate. He exfoliates, he moisturizes. He needs to. He lives in South Florida. The guy's exposed to the sun all the time. A pit boy. Can you imagine? I saw him in Ottawa a few years ago, and all I could comment on about was his skin and how radiant it was. And he said, "Well, I live in South Florida." And that was pretty much our conversation.
I got one word for you: shade, buddy.
Yeah,
that's how you keep the lines away.
A hat on, maybe.
The head coach of the 95 Dolphins, I think his last year, was the legendary Don Shula.
Unbelievable.
Head coach the 95 Oilers was Jeff Fisher.
Great guy.
And Mike Munchak, now the Steelers' offensive line coach, was an Oilers assistant. Tell us about these guys and who are some of the best coaches you ever played under. And
yeah, unbelievable. Also add to that in BC, Adam Rita, CFL legend. So we'll start with Don Shula. Here I am at home on the couch, wondering where my football life is going to go. All dreams have been shattered by being cut in Detroit. Phone rings. Next thing you know, I'm playing for the Miami Dolphins. Dan Marino himself walked in the room. Actually, I went and did a workout. Here's my workout. Before I go to the workout, I'm in the bathroom. I'm staring myself in the mirror, giving myself a little pep talk, and not really paying attention to anything going on around me. I knew there was a person beside me, but in a bathroom, you don't stare at people too very much.
I do.
Yeah.
But we're talking about you.
And all of a sudden, I'm getting hit with all this hairspray. And I'm like, what's going on? So I look over, and it's this little old man. And he's like, sorry, babe. Joe Namath standing beside me in the bathroom. Yeah, he's getting ready to do an interview, and he's doing this hairspray thing where he's going overboard. He looks at me and goes, sorry, babe. Goes back to what he's doing. I'm like, that's Joe Namath. That's crazy. That little sweetie right there. And he had all leather skin, probably hammered too. He's like, I love you, baby. I love you. How are you?
We got to get him in touch with Dan Marino, man. Fix that skin.
So I go out to do this workout, and I'm giving everything I got. I'm actually doing a workout. It's a one-on-one kind of thing, and some movement things, and then I start kind of doing a offense defense thing against this guy I trained with leading up to that season. And so I'm like, take it easy on me, bud. Why are you going so hard? The whole thing. And he wasn't taking it easy because it's he's a rookie too, and I can remember getting up from hitting the bag, and I sort of got chafed my face on this pad, and I'm just like shaking my head a little bit. And I look up. And here's Joe Namath, who's getting ready to do this interview, Don Shula, and Mean Joe Green standing there. I'm like, what is going on? How is this even real? So bizarre. And, so I got a lot of time to spend with Don Shula that year. Right after he'd ruptured his Achilles heel, and so he would always be one of the first guys in the morning, and so was I. So we'd always kind of see each other then, have a little conversation, and go about the day, and then I'd always make sure I was the last person at the facility every single day, just make it look like I was working the hardest. And end of the day, I'd get in the hot tub, and Don Shula would get in the hot tub every single day too. At the end of the day, and we would sit there and kiss each other. I mean, sorry, and just talk, just hang out. And here's like an opportunity for me, to sit there. And we did it. I did it every single day, and we talked for half an hour, 45 minutes. And he mostly talked about what he's going to do when he retires and traveling the world. And we talked about Canada. Everybody always wanted to talk about Canada. Everywhere I went, it was like, hey, can you get some beer? Can you send down some beer? And but people loved Canada, and they always had a little bit of an interest in the CFL. A lot of the players, because it's always an option, Plan B for those guys, and just the country too. Like people are just so interested in it. And Don Shula had a son who lived in Quebec, and we would talk about that, and just amazing opportunity to speak to that person who, like, for a large part of my life was like a person I looked up to and watched on television, right? And so that was an amazing experience. Going to the Oilers with Jeff Fisher So Don Shula was in his last year, and by almost every standard, he was sort of checking himself out. He was going through the motions. This is just my opinion, but he seemed to be going through the motions a lot. He was clearly had sort of maybe lost the passion for the game that he probably had previous to that, and it was sort of why they brought a rookie from Canada who was going to work super hard into this environment. It's because it was filled full of guys who had been like first-round draft picks. I think there was 21 first-round draft picks on that team. There's Don Shula, who's getting ready to take his curtain call, the whole bit. And they're like, this season isn't going very well. Let's bring in some guy to add a spark. And that was kind of my role. So I went in and went crazy every day and lifted weights and ran around the field and did extra drills and was first there, last to leave, the whole bit. And even when I got traded at the end of the year, Don Shula, I happened to run into him just before I left, and he's like, we tried to keep you on the team. We had a meeting, the whole bit. And I'm like, really? Why? And they're like, well, we needed you here for your leadership. And that was an important moment in my development when I realized that low man on the totem pole can be a leader, and just by going out there and setting an example on a daily basis, by being the guy who works hard when everyone's watching and when no one's watching. And that was an amazing experience, and to come from someone like Don Shula, who is maybe one of the greatest sporting leaders of our generation anyways, it was a really cool experience. And then to go from there to the Oilers, where there was Jeff Fisher, who was right the sort of the prime of his career, which he was just sort of getting his feet wet, and he'd come from a playing career, and so he was still a pretty young guy, but he was a really well loved guy, and everything was about motivation and about teamwork, and it was a really cool environment to be in, and also a super nice guy. And, had the time for everybody. And he always, made time to speak to the guys who were in their first, second years and everybody. And just really had a way of organizing the team. And it made me realize sort of what a head coach needs to be. And he needs to be someone who's a great organizer. So he knew how to run the show, and a great motivator. He knew what the right things to say at the right time, and he could sort of feel the ups and downs of a season. And he knew just what to say to pick you up, to keep you heading in the direction. So that was really cool for sure. Mike Munchak. So I got to Houston. Everyone says, hey, you look like a young Mike Munchak. And I'd never heard of Mike Munchak. And I quickly learned the legend of Mike Munchak, a guy who never, I don't think, ever missed a snap of football his whole career. Everyone said he never lost a one-on-one in practice or in a game or anything, and a lot of people consider him the greatest offensive lineman ever to play, and he's definitely someone who I'd never even heard of. But I was fortunate enough that he was just retiring, and he was starting to be a coach. He was I forget what you call the coach, but the guy who like the guy who holds up the other team's defense for the scout team. He was that. So I didn't even normally that's just like a guy who's like someone's brother-in-law's son or something like that. And here it is, it's Mike Munchak. So I didn't really understand that this guy holding up the other teams, was a legend. And so people were telling me, and at that point he'd lost a lot of weight too. He was probably only like 240 at the time, so he didn't even look like an offensive lineman. And but in that off season, he took me and a couple other guys, and he just he trained us and he helped us out with technique, and it was a really great experience to be around him. And he's gone on to do a lot of great things in football for sure. And I believe he's in the Hall of Fame too, which is says a lot. And Bruce Matthews, definitely one of the most gifted offensive linemen ever to play the game, and definitely that I was ever around. A guy who wasn't necessarily really big, really strong. He was a big guy. He's like 6'4" and 290 pounds. But when you look at him, it doesn't look like he ever lifted a weight in his life. He doesn't look like he's ever trained. He just looks like a big, friendly old guy. But, man, he could move his feet. And we go to intelligence, and the guy just knew the game. He knew exactly where to be. He knew what to do, what technique to use against all sorts of different people. And I believe he played, offensive line for, 18 years in the NFL. A crazy, crazy long time. And he played all 5 positions, too. That's another thing. And that year we had a second-year left tackle. And anytime the Oilers played Reggie White or any big name defensive lineman like that, they would put Bruce Matthews from guard to tackle. Like that's, I mean, an unbelievable, compliment to a person, especially a little bit later on in his career, like Bruce was when I played with him. So just an amazing athlete, an amazing guy. And I can remember a story that he told me. It was after the first day of training camp. They do this like a beep test where they make everybody run till they throw up. And so all the offensive linemen were doing it together, and we like, it's not gonna, we're not gonna throw up. Sure enough, 7 minutes in, everyone's heaving, and so everybody goes back into the change room. People are just lying on their backs, just the chests going up and down. You're looking around to see who's gonna have a heart attack because there's some big dudes in there breathing hard. And there's Bruce Matthews starts to tell us a story about his first day at, I believe it's UCLA. I forget which university he went to, but it was some California university. And he talked about his first day there, where he got walking from practice to the meal hall was like 200 meters across this big field, and he was having muscle cramps so bad that he couldn't make it across the field. He was in the middle of the field, and he lay down, and he couldn't move, and he was the last guy, and nobody else came by to help him, and he lay there for hours, and he said it got dark before he could get up and walk away. It's a pretty funny story from Bruce Matthews and talking to,
Just too afraid to scream for
yeah,
help?
Yeah. Well, 23 years later, he's in the Hall of Fame, so, he never give up.
I can't question a guy like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Was he the best offensive lineman I ever played with? I think of a friend of mine, Mark Stepnoski, who is possibly one of the greatest stories ever to play offensive line. A smaller guy, 6'2", 230 pounds, playing against 300-400 pounders, and he just had this incredible technique where he could leverage a giant player and use that person's size and strength against themselves. And we were watching video one time, and we literally saw Mark Stepnoski throw like a 400 pounder, like what looked like 15 feet, and we watched it over and over because it was incredible. And he just had this natural ability to move really well and to know the game inside and out. And then his technique was perfect. And to sit and watch these guys, just from being in a room with these guys and watching them and hearing their comments and their suggestions, you become 5 times the player that you ever thought you could be. And it's amazing to have been around these players and to see what they're like, off the field too. We watch the game and we see all these big, mean, tough guys, but to walk into a room and see a lazy boy with 20 books stacked beside it shows another side of sort of humanity in football players.
Say, you're an excellent football player. You're just smoking pipes all the time. You find out they're all walking around in robes, very sophisticated.
Yeah. I love it.
So you talk about your brother a lot in your motivational speaking. Your older brother, by how many years?
4.5 years.
4.5 years. Also a football player?
No, he was born with a heart condition where he was not able to participate in sports. He had a couple holes in his heart, and he had one lung. And the biggest sports fan that you'd ever see. But he was unable to play sports. He would always volunteer to be like the manager of hockey teams and that sort of thing, just to be around sports, always watching sports. A huge NHL fan, every kind of fan. He would watch the Blue Jays. He would watch at the time there was no NHL team in Ottawa, so he would watch the Maple Leafs, the Canadiens, the Philadelphia Flyers, and he was always my biggest fan. He always had this sort of big athletic baby brother that he always sort of took under his wing, and he had sights set on me playing professional sports. And it was when we were watching the 1985 Super Bowl with Dan Marino playing that we decided that someday I was going to play in the NFL, and we would go out and play catch, and he would time me doing sprints and all sorts of stuff. And unfortunately 9 months later, after a football game, my last football game of the year, I finished the game. I walk into the change room, and my uncle was there, and he told me that my brother had passed away that day on October 30th, 1985, and that's the day I made the promise that I would never give up trying to achieve that dream until there was nowhere left to keep doing it or till I did it. And the next 10 years were filled with mostly failure, injuries, things not going my way. And then on October 30th, 1995 is the day that I met Dan Marino, and he told me I'd made the team. And so it was 10 years to the day of him passing, and it was Dan Marino, the person who we were watching when we set that goal. So it's an incredible story. And it's a story of never giving up, of making making a promise and trying to live towards it, trying to work towards it, no matter what happens. And it's also a story that if there's something that you want bad enough, that it's going to take time, right? It's going to take maybe 10 years, of failure, of things not going your way, that you have to every single day point yourself in that direction and learn from your mistakes and keep moving forward. And it's just an incredible journey and an incredible story.
That's pretty incredible, man. And that concludes part 1 of our interview with Mark Hatfield. And yes, you heard me correctly, part 1. We actually talked to this guy for like 90 minutes. He was that captivating, that entertaining. He's got a lot more stories, a lot more hilarious stuff. How about that Joe Namath, eh? Hairspray. I would have thought he would be like a pomade kind of guy, the thick shit, but Hairspray it is. God, I miss having hair. Anyways, this is neither here nor there. That is part 1. Part 2 is coming on the next podcast, so look out for that. He's got lots more great stories, lots more interesting insights. We hope you'll tune back with us again, and we'll probably set up the interview better next time. And please do check out Mark Hatfield's podcast, The Hatfield Trip. That was my glass of whiskey you just heard in the background. Check it out, The Hatfield Trip. It's hilarious. He's also on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and all that stuff. You can catch a stand-up there. That's and Friendster and MySpace and Bumble and Grindr and all the good things. Ask Jeeves. Yeah. He's on Angie's List, the whole thing. He'll do it all for you. And if you really need to see him bad and you live in the great city of Ottawa, start a fire. You know what I mean? He's a great guy. You'll love having him there. So please come back and listen to the next half of that, and I hope you enjoyed that. And we love being here. You know what? I got to take another sip of that whiskey. Okay? In the meantime, we'll see you later.